Previously, Mev never wanted to be at that wedding, but a mix-up at the table sat her beside Sloane Avery, a guarded tech mogul whose bride had just fled. What began as an awkward mistake turned into an unlikely connection. Rumors spread, the internet exploded, and suddenly Mev was caught in a storm she never asked for. Yet against all logic, dinners, late-night talks, and stolen moments kept pulling her closer to Sloane. Now, Mev has to decide if this accidental fake bride story is just chaos or the start of something real. For part 1, link is in the description. You make it sound simple. It's not, but I'd rather build something messy and real than perfect and empty. The words settled between them like a contract neither of them needed to sign out loud. Mev leaned forward and kissed her. Light, grateful, affirming. The rest of the morning passed in fragments. Shared coffee in bed, quiet conversation, bare feet on cold floors, laughter in the kitchen as Mev tried to make eggs and nearly set off the smoke alarm. Sloane leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her like she was seeing something she hadn't known she was missing. Later, when Mev finally dressed and prepared to leave, she paused at the door. Am I walking out of something real? She asked, voice soft. Sloane stepped closer. I hope you're walking into something real. Mev smiled, kissed her again, and stepped into the hall. That night, back in her apartment, Mev lay awake for hours. It wasn't anxiety. It was something more complicated. The beginning of something serious didn't just bring warmth. It brought doubt, fear of expectation, fear of messing it up, and under it all, the still growing ache of the attention she was starting to receive. The next morning, she checked her email and found two strange messages. One from a journalist requesting comment, the other from a stranger calling her an opportunist. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't asked for this, hadn't chased it, but that didn't matter. The story was alive now, and it had teeth. She didn't tell Sloane. Not yet. Part of her didn't want to make it Sloane's problem. Part of her didn't want to seem overwhelmed. But the messages kept coming. Ms. Tags, comments. Her name was everywhere. Mev Ellison, the accidental bride, the mystery girlfriend, the woman who didn't belong. She closed her laptop, shoved her phone into a drawer, and tried to breathe. Later that day, Sloane texted, "Want to come over tonight?" Mev stared at the screen, then typed, "Yes, but I need to talk to you about something." Sloane replied, "Okay, I'm here." When she arrived, Sloane greeted her with a kiss that melted some of the tension away, but not all of it. They sat together on the couch, knees touching, and Mev finally said what had been pressing against her chest. "People are starting to talk to Dig. It's getting ugly." Sloane was quiet for a long moment. Then I'm sorry. I should have warned you it would get worse before it got better. It's not your fault, Mev said, but it's happening, and I don't know how to exist in this. Sloane took her hand. You don't have to navigate it alone. Mev nodded slowly. I don't want to be someone who hides, but I also don't know how to be someone who's watched. Sloane squeezed her fingers. Then let's figure it out together. No timeline, no rules. Just you and me. Mev leaned her head on Sloane's shoulder, her heart heavy and full at the same time. They sat like that for a long time, and in that stillness, Mev realized something that scared her more than the headlines, more than the strangers online. She was falling in love with Sloane quietly, unstoppably, and maybe, just maybe, Sloane was falling too. Mev hadn't planned to cry, not in Sloane's arms. Not in her apartment, not over an article posted by a faceless writer who had never met her, but when she read the line, a graphic designer from Brooklyn. Mev Ellison is a nobody in a world of billionaires. Rumors suggest she's an opportunist riding the wave of Sloane Avery's vulnerability. Something inside her cracked. She didn't cry for the insult. She cried for the part of her that wondered if it might be true. That tiny voice she kept shoving down. The one that whispered, "You don't belong here." Sloane had found her like that, curled up on the sofa, phone in hand, screen still lit. face tight with emotion she hadn't allowed to surface. Sloane didn't say anything at first. She just sat beside her, clothes present. Maeve tried to blink away the tears to make a joke, to pretend. But the words came out thin, brittle. I don't know how to do this. Sloane took the phone from her hand and set it face down on the table. Then, don't do it alone. Maeve shook her head. This isn't just people talking anymore. They're digging. They found my high school blog. They're messaging my family. They're rewriting my life into something ugly. Sloane's voice was low, steady. I'll make it stop. You can't, Maeve said. You can't control the internet or public opinion. You can't buy silence. Sloane's jaw tightened. No, but I can protect you. Maeve looked at her. How? Sloane didn't answer immediately by not hiding you anymore. The silence that followed was heavy. Maeve felt it settle over her skin through her bones. What does that mean? It means if we're going to do this, I want to do it with intention. No more pretending you're someone I bumped into. No more denying you matter to me. Maeve Ellison's heart thudded painfully. You want to go public? Sloane nodded. I do. Maeve stood, pacing the room. That's not a small thing. That's interviews, headlines, photographers waiting outside my apartment. Every part of my life becomes a conversation I didn't consent to. I know, Sloane said gently, but right now, people are talking anyway. At least if we take control, we can tell the truth. Maeve turned to her. And what is the truth, Sloane? Sloane stepped closer, not touching, not rushing, just letting the air between them shrink. The truth is I like you a lot, and I'm tired of pretending I don't. Maeve swallowed hard. That's the first time you've said it. It's the first time I let myself feel it. Maeve closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her voice was barely audible. I like you, too, and it terrifies me. Why? Because you could make me fall harder than I've ever fallen. And I don't know if I'm strong enough for what comes after that. Sloane's eyes didn't waver. Then we fall carefully together. Maeve let out a shaky breath. You make it sound simple. It's not, Sloane said, but it is worth it. That night, they didn't go out. They didn't talk to the press. They didn't even check their phones. They made dinner together. Well, mostly Maeve trying and Sloane watching, and ended up eating cold pasta on the couch. Legs tangled, laughter warming the space between them. At one point, Maeve reached over and touched Sloane's face, thumb grazing the corner of her mouth, and whispered, You scare me, but in the best way. Sloane kissed her, slow and steady, and said, Then I'll be patient. And she was. Over the next week, they saw each other often. Quiet dinners, morning coffees, late-night conversations that stretched into dawn. Maeve was introduced to Sloane's dog. Sloane noticed Maeve Ellison's unruly bookshelf. They didn't speak about the future yet, but it hovered between them like a soft promise until the interview aired. It was a brief segment, just 7 minutes, recorded weeks before the non-wedding. Sloane spoke about legacy, about redefining success. And then, at the end, the host asked, Is there someone special in your life? Sloane offered the faintest smile. There might be, she'd said, but I think some things deserve the chance to grow in quiet before they're given to the noise. The internet erupted. Fans speculated. Gossip sites recycled everything. Maeve Ellison's name trended again. Only this time, the tone had shifted. It wasn't mockery anymore. It was curiosity, obsession, fixation with who she was, where she came from, why her. Maeve felt her breath thinning with every headline. Sloane Avery's secret girlfriend. Who is Maeve Ellison? The quiet artist who captured a billionaire's heart. She called Sloane, voice trembling. I can't do this if I vanish inside it. If I stop being me. Sloane's reply was gentle but firm. Then don't disappear. I'll help you stay seen. Stay you. Maeve hesitated, then asked the question she hadn't dared until now. Do you want this to be serious? Sloane didn't pause. It already is. And with that answer, Maev finally let herself believe it. The invitation arrived on heavy cardstock wrapped in silver ribbon, with elegant calligraphy that made it feel more like a royal summons than a social event. Sloane's assistant had set it carefully on her kitchen counter with a quiet, "You've been expected to attend for months." It was a charity gala, high profile. Black tie, cameras, reporters, red carpet, the kind of night that built or broke reputations. And now, with the headlines still thrumming from the interview and her name once more knotted in the public's imagination, Sloane looked to Maev and said, "I want you to come with me." Maev didn't answer at once. She stood at the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the skyline like it contained the answer. "You mean with you? Like, officially?" Sloane nodded. "If you're willing." Maev turned to face her. "You know what that means." "Yes," Sloane said. "It means the first photo of us together. It means speculation, questions, narratives we won't be able to steer." Maev exhaled, slow and unsure. "It also means every part of my life gets cracked open." Sloane stepped nearer. "Then we don't go. I'd never ask you to do what you're not ready for." Maev searched her face. "But you want me there. I want you with me always. But I won't push you into the fire." Maev shook her head. "You're not rushing me. I'm just choosing whether or not to jump." Sloane said nothing, just waited. After a long silence, Maev said, "Okay, I'll go." The next few days blurred into fittings, calls, quiet planning sessions with Sloane's publicist, and a steady, unspoken current of mounting pressure. Maev watched herself being reshaped in photos she didn't know were taken, leaving Sloane's apartment, walking to work, sitting alone at a cafe. She'd become a story, and the story was spinning faster than she could hold it. But at night, when it was only them, no cameras, no stylists, no press, Sloane held her like she was still the woman she'd met by accident, and Maev clung tighter. The night of the gala came, and Maev stood before the full-length mirror in Sloane's room, studying her reflection. The gown was deep green silk, fitted but not revealing, the neckline elegant, the back open. Her hair was up, soft strands framing her face. She looked beautiful but also unfamiliar. "You look like yourself," Sloane said behind her. Maev gave her a look through the mirror. "I look like a fantasy version of myself." Sloane stepped behind her, resting her hands lightly on Maev's shoulders. "No, you look like the woman I've been falling for since the moment you didn't run." Maev turned around, heart-catching. "You've been falling?" Sloane nodded. "Yes," Maev whispered. "Me, too." The ride to the venue was silent except for the occasional touch, fingers brushing, eyes meeting. When the car pulled up to the red carpet, Maev felt her pulse rise like a tidal wave. The door opened, flashing lights, voices. "Sloane, is that Maev Ellison?" "Sloane, are you confirming the relationship?" Maev reached for Sloane's hand. Sloane gripped hers firmly. "We step out together," she said, "and we walk. No matter what they say. Eyes on me." Maev nodded. "One breath, two." Then she stepped out into the light. The flashing cameras were relentless, the shouting louder than she'd imagined. Questions flew like arrows, but Sloane's hand stayed wrapped around hers. Sloane didn't rush, didn't flinch. She moved with a calm confidence. Maev envied, her smile soft but unyielding. Maev focused on the contact, hand in hand, a quiet promise. When they reached the photo area, Sloane paused, turned toward her slightly, and whispered, "We can stop here." Maev looked at her. "No, I want to finish this with you." They posed together, not stiffly, not like a performance, just two women standing side by side in a storm of attention they hadn't asked for. And for the first time, Maev didn't feel like an intruder. She felt chosen. Later, inside the venue, the atmosphere was dim, warm, full of Colton and laughter and elegant disinterest. Sloane introduced Maev to CEOs, actors, artists. Maev smiled, nodded, answered questions politely. She kept a Colton of water in her hand and counted her breaths between conversations. But every time she looked up, Sloane was watching her quietly, protectively, proudly. At one point, after the third small talk spiral in a row, Maeve escaped to the balcony. Sloane found her there a few minutes later. You okay? Maeve leaned against the railing. I don't know. I feel like I've been wearing someone else's skin all night. Sloane stepped beside her. Do you regret coming? Maeve shook her head. No. But I'm scared that this will keep growing. That I'll lose myself. Sloane was silent for a moment. Then she said, if I ever make you feel like you're disappearing, tell me. Scream it. Walk away if you have to. But don't let this swallow you. Maeve turned to her. I don't want to walk away. Sloane reached out and cupped her face. Then let's keep choosing each other every step. Maeve leaned into the touch. You promise? Sloane's voice didn't shake. I promise. When they kissed on that balcony, just once brief, but seen it was the image that would land on every magazine cover the next morning. But they didn't think about that yet. For now, all they felt was the night air, the shared breath between them, and the solid, undeniable truth of what they were building. Something real, something chosen. Maeve had thought the kiss on the balcony would be the moment everything shifted. And it was. But not in the way she expected. She had imagined a slow ripple, maybe a few more articles, some interviews reaching out, a bit of noise that would fade over time. But by the next morning, it was clear this was not a ripple. It was a tidal wave. Her face was on the homepage of every news outlet that covered celebrity culture. Not as a footnote, as the headline. Sloane Avery makes it official. Meet her girlfriend, Maeve Ellison. The photo was everywhere. Maeve in green silk. Sloane's hand on her waist, lips brushing under the soft city lights. It was intimate. Too intimate. It hadn't been posed, hadn't been planned. And that made it all the more explosive. Her inbox filled in minutes. So did her voicemail, her social media notifications. Then came the calls from people she hadn't spoken to in years. Maeve. The voice came through her phone around 10 a.m. She recognized it instantly. Her chest tightened. Adrian. Wow, he said, a little bitter, a little amused. Didn't think I'd be hearing about you on the news. Maeve swallowed hard, walking into her bedroom to get away from the noise outside. It's been a while. Many years, he said. 3 years and suddenly you're the most Googled name on the internet. What do you want? She asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Just wondering if all this is real or if it's just a performance. Maeve felt heat rise in her neck. It's real. So, you're actually dating her? Yes. Silence then. And she knows. Knows what? Maeve asked sharply. You know what? Adrian Cole said everything about before about us. Maeve Ellison's blood turned cold. That's none of your business anymore. It might be hers, he said. Especially now that you're the center of attention. Don't call me again, she snapped and hung up. Her hands were shaking. She didn't realize she was crying until she sat down on the edge of the bed and wiped at her face. It wasn't just the call. It was the way it made her feel. Exposed, cracked open, dragged back into a life she'd spent years trying to rebuild. When Sloane texted a few minutes later, You okay? I saw the headlines. Want to come over? Maeve didn't answer right away. She needed space. But more than that, she needed to figure out how much of her past she was ready to share. And if Sloane would still look at her the same way when she did. That night, after hours of trying to work and failing, Maeve finally packed a small bag and called a car to Sloane's. The door opened before she knocked. Sloane didn't ask questions. She just pulled Maeve inside and held her, the kind of hold that said, I see you even when you're silent. They sat on the couch wrapped in one blanket, neither speaking for a long time. Then, finally, Maeve said, Someone called me today from my past. Sloane looked at her carefully. Someone who hurt you. Someone I used to love a long time ago. It ended badly, and now they're reaching out because of all this. Yes. Sloane didn't flinch. Do you want to talk about it? Maev hesitated, then quietly. I used to be engaged to a man. Adrian Cole. Sloane blinked but didn't speak. Maev continued, voice steadier now. We were young. It was safe. We made sense on paper. But it never felt right. I kept telling myself it was enough. That maybe I just wasn't passionate. Maybe love wasn't fireworks for everyone. But the closer the wedding got, the more I felt like I was choking. Sloane was silent, listening. Maev looked down. I left him many weeks before the wedding. I didn't give a big explanation. I didn't even fully understand it myself then. All I knew was that I couldn't spend my life lying to myself about what I wanted, who I was. She looked up, eyes coltony. He was furious. Said I ruined him. And maybe I did. But I saved myself. Sloane's expression didn't change. She just reached out, took Maev Ellison's hand. Thank you for telling me. Maev searched her face. You're not upset. Why would I be? Because I lied by omission. I didn't tell you earlier. Sloane squeezed her hand. You told me when you were ready. That's not lying. That's protecting your peace. Maev exhaled, something inside her loosening. I was afraid you'd think I wasn't sure about you, about us. I'm not him, Sloane said. And you're not who you were back then. You're here with me choosing this. That's what matters. Maev nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. Sloane leaned in, wiped it gently away. Do you still love him? No, Maev said immediately. I don't think I ever did. Not like this. Sloane smiled softly. Then let's not let his voice be louder than ours. That night, they lay in bed, not touching at first, just breathing together. Then Maev rolled onto her side, pulled Sloane closer, and rested her head against her chest. I'm scared of losing myself in all this, she whispered. You won't, Sloane said, because I'll remind you who you are, even on the days you forget. Maev closed her eyes, and for the first time since the call, she believed it. The story broke on a Wednesday. Maev was walking home from the bookstore, paper bag tucked under her arm, when her phone started buzzing nonstop. She didn't check it right away. She'd promised herself an hour offline, just 1 hour to be present to remember who she was without all the noise. But when she saw Priya's name flash across the screen 3 times in a row, she knew. Her fingers trembled as she opened the link. Sloane Avery's girlfriend once fled her own wedding. Former fiancé speaks out. There it was, her past, no longer hers. The article painted her as cold, unstable, indecisive. A woman who couldn't commit, who ran when things got too real. Adrian's quotes were carefully crafted, just vague enough to seem fair, just pointed enough to be cruel. I hope she's finally found what she wants. I just wish she hadn't needed to destroy me to figure that out. Maev felt her knees go weak. She sat on the edge of a bench, blinking hard. The comments were worse. Strangers speculating about her motives, her history, her sexuality, her worth. A few defended her. Most didn't. She tried to breathe to remind herself she wasn't that girl anymore. That the woman Adrian had loved never existed. Not fully. Sloane called as she was unlocking her door. Maev answered on the 3rd ring. I saw it, Sloane said. Her voice was steady, controlled. But there was something behind it. Anger, quiet, and deep. Are you okay? Maev didn't lie. No, but I'm managing. Do you want me to come to you? No, I want to come to you. Sloane paused. Then I'm waiting. The moment Maev walked into Sloane's apartment, she collapsed into her arms. They didn't talk right away, just stood there, bodies pressed together. The silence holding everything they couldn't say. Later, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, Sloane finally spoke. I'm going to have my legal team respond. We can shut this down. No, Maev said softly. Let them say what they want. I'm done hiding. Sloane turned to her. Are you sure? Maev nodded. I want people to know who I really am. And if they only see half the story, that's on them. I won't let shame write my narrative anymore. Sloane looked at her, eyes full of something fierce and tender. You amaze me. You study me, Maev replied. That's how I'm able to do this. A beat passed. Then Sloane said, My mother wants to meet you. Maev blinked. Wait, what? Sloane gave a small smile. She knows about you. She saw the photos and she asked when I was going to stop pretending you were just a friend. Maev's stomach flipped and you said, I said you weren't ready yet. But maybe you are. Maev stared at her. Sloane, meeting your mother is a lot. I know, she said gently, but you've been carrying the weight of my world for weeks. I want you to see the parts of it that matter most, the ones I protect. Maev hesitated. You're not trying to distract me from the article, are you? Sloane's expression softened. No, I'm trying to remind you that you're not defined by people who left you, only by the ones who choose you again and again. The next day, Maev dressed with care, not for the press, not for strangers, but for a woman she hadn't met yet, who had raised the person she was falling for. Sloane drove them herself. No car service, no driver, just her, hands steady on the wheel, eyes flicking to Maev at stoplights with small, reassuring smiles. They arrived at a brownstone in Harlem, ivy creeping along the iron gate. The door opened before they knocked. Sloane's mother was tall, poised, with silver-streaked curls and eyes that missed nothing. She hugged Sloane tightly, then looked at Maev. So, you're the one who made her soft. Maev blinked. Excuse me? She's been still since she was 12, the woman said. But lately, I see warmth. That's you. Maev flushed. I thank you. They ate in the garden under string lights, and the smell of rosemary from a nearby planter. Sloane's mother told stories about Sloane as a child, fierce, independent, stubborn as hell. Maev laughed more than she expected to. She felt welcome, seen. After dessert, as they sipped tea, Sloane excused herself to take a call. Maev and her mother sat in silence for a moment. Then the older woman said, She's never brought anyone here. Not once. Not even the woman we thought she'd marry. Maev looked at her surprised. Really? She said. So I don't know what this is between you two. But it's real because this house, this garden, these are her walls and you're inside them. Maev felt her throat tighten. I'm trying not to mess it up. Then don't, she said simply. Be honest. Be steady. That's all she needs. On the way home, Maev rested her head against the window and whispered, Your mom's terrifying. Sloane laughed. That was her being warm. She said, I made you soft. Sloane reached for her hand. You did. Maev turned to her, eyes shining. Then let me stay that way. The email came in the middle of the night. Maev had left her laptop open, the glow of the screen casting a faint light across the bedroom while she lay curled against Sloane's back, her arm draped over the woman. She was slowly learning how to love without fear. She wasn't expecting anything urgent, but the subject line caught her eye when she turned over to plug in her charger. Request for interview. Your story deserves a voice. The sender was a respected journalist, one who is known not for gossip, but for truth, for empathy, for depth. Still, Maev's stomach tightened. The message was kind to kind. Maybe it acknowledged the firestorm, the headlines, the speculation. It offered her a chance to speak, not as a scandal, not as a side character in Sloane's life, but as herself on her own terms. No ambush, it said. No trick questions, just a conversation, just truth. She closed the laptop and didn't sleep. The next morning, over coffee, she told Sloane, I got an interview request. Sloane set her mug down carefully. Who? Tessa Colton, the documentary-style interviewer. It would air on national TV. Nothing tabloid. Sloane looked at her, searching. And how do you feel about it? Like if I say yes, I might lose something. And if I say no, I might already be losing something anyway. What do you think you'd say if you went? Maev shrugged. I don't know. That I didn't ask for this. That I was just a +1 at a wedding I didn't belong at. That I sat down beside you and everything changed. And I'm still trying to understand how. Sloane reached across the table, her hand resting over Maev's. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Maev nodded. I know, but maybe I owe one to myself. That evening, Maev went for a walk alone. No destination, just movement. She passed a coffee shop where someone recognized her, whispered her name, took a photo without asking. She didn't stop them, but she didn't smile either. She kept walking until her feet ached, until her mind slowed, until she could breathe again. When she returned to Sloane's, the apartment was dim and quiet. Sloane was reading on the couch, barefoot, cold tone sliding down her nose, hair loose. She looked up when Maev walked in. Hey. Maev hesitated in the doorway. Can we talk? Always. Maev sat beside her, folding her legs underneath herself. I think I want to do the interview. Sloane didn't speak at first. Then you don't have to explain. But if you want to tell me why, I'll listen. Maev took a breath. Because I feel like I've been reacting this entire time, running from things, letting other people shape the story, and I don't want that anymore. I want my voice back. Sloane reached out, brushed a strand of hair from Maev's cheek. Then do it. I'll be watching. I'll be waiting for you on the other side of it. Maev smiled, nerves flickering just beneath her skin. What if I mess it up? Then you mess it up and we deal with it together. The interview was scheduled for 3 days later. A private studio. No live audience. Just Maev, the interviewer, and 2 cameras. She wore something simple, a navy blouse, dark jeans, minimal makeup. She didn't want to be polished. She wanted to be seen. When the lights came on, her heart pounded so loudly. She thought it might drown out the questions. But Tessa Colton was gentle. She didn't prod. She didn't poke. She simply asked, Who are you, Maev Ellison? And Maev answered, I'm someone who used to think quiet meant invisible. That if I kept my head down, no one would notice me, and that was safer. But then I sat at the wrong table at a wedding, and the wrong place became the right place. And I met someone who saw me before I could even see myself. Tessa smiled. Did you fall in love? Maev hesitated. I'm still falling every day. The interview was honest, messy in parts, emotional. She talked about Adrian, not by name, but by the lessons she carried. She talked about fear, about shame, about rebuilding herself from the ground up, and about Sloane. About how love with her didn't feel like being consumed. It felt like being built. The segment aired 2 nights later. Maev and Sloane watched it from the couch, wrapped in a blanket, popcorn between them, hands laced. The reaction was immediate and different this time. People weren't calling her a mystery woman anymore. They were calling her brave, calling her real. And for once, she believed it. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Sloane turned to her and said, You made people see you, but more importantly, you reminded me how to see myself. Too? Maev whispered, I love you. The words came out without panic, without hesitation. Sloane froze for a second, then smiled slow, deep full. I love you, too. And just like that, the noise of the world faded into something small. And what was left was 2 women in a quiet room, choosing each other over and over. The city outside was alive as always. Horns, lights, the dull hum of traffic rising into the sky. But inside the apartment, everything was still. Soft music drifted from the speakers in the living room. Something slow and wordless. The kind of melody that filled space without stealing attention. Maev stood barefoot in the center of Sloane's bedroom, her fingertips trailing along the edge of the dresser, the soft fabric of her t-shirt brushing against her thighs. She could hear Sloane in the kitchen, her quiet footsteps, the sound of water running, to wine cold tones clinking. The interview had aired 2 days ago. The storm had not disappeared, but something had shifted. For the first time, Maev wasn't afraid of being seen. She wasn't shrinking from the noise. She'd spoken her truth, and instead of shattering, she had found herself still standing, stronger. clearer. And now, all that remained between them was the silence that follows survival. The moment when you realize the storm has passed, and all that's left is what you've chosen to keep. When Sloane walked in carrying both Coltons, her eyes met Mav's like they always did now, without defenses. She handed her a Colton, their fingers brushing, and said, "To the quiet after." Mav smiled to finally hearing ourselves think. They drank. They sat on the edge of the bed, knees touching, bodies turned inward. The wine was rich and warm, but it wasn't the alcohol that made Mav feel light. It was the way Sloane looked at her, like she was already known, already safe. "Can I ask you something?" Mav said softly. Sloane nodded. "Always." "When did you know?" "Know what?" "That this wasn't temporary." Sloane's expression didn't waver. "The second night, when you came over without makeup in that worn hoodie and fell asleep on my shoulder mid-sentence. That was the moment I stopped protecting myself." Mav laughed gently, eyes misting. "I didn't think I was doing anything special." "You weren't. You were just being you, and that was everything." Mav set her Colton down. Sloane followed. The space between them shifted, not with urgency, but with gravity. Mav reached out first, fingers finding Sloane's, then her wrist, then the soft slope of her jaw. Sloane's breath caught, but she didn't move away. Mav leaned in slowly, brushing her lips once against hers. Gentle, deliberate. When they kissed again, it deepened. Not rushed, not demanding, just open, willing. Mav pulled back enough to whisper, "I want to stay night." Sloane's voice was low, reverent. "Stay. Stay as long as you want." Mav kissed her again. Hands explored with patience. Mouths opened with trust. They undressed each other like memory, slow, full of pauses of looking. Mav had never been touched this way before. With worship, with patience. Sloane's hands traced her skin like she was learning a language she intended to speak fluently. When they finally lay skin to skin, everything else fell away. Mav Ellison's breath hitched as Sloane's lips pressed into the curve of her neck, her shoulder, the soft space just above her heart. There was no performance in the way they moved together. Only listening, only giving, only the soft push and pull of desire wrapped in something deeper. Mav ran her hands down Sloane's back, whispering her name like a tether. Sloane buried her face into the crook of Mav's neck and said, "I've never wanted to give myself to someone like this." "Then don't give," Mav murmured. "Just be with me." When they came undone, it wasn't fireworks. It was surrender. It was exhale. It was the quiet collapse of walls that had stood for too long. After they lay tangled in the sheets, the window cracked open to let the breeze in. Mav rested her head on Sloane's chest, fingers tracing lazy lines along her arm. Sloane's hand stroked her back in long, slow motions. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Mav said, "I was always scared intimacy would feel like losing something. But this feels like gaining everything I didn't know I was missing." Sloane pressed her lips to Mav's forehead. "You didn't lose yourself. You just made space for someone else inside the life you're building." Mav nodded against her. "And I want that space to stay yours." Sloane pulled her closer. "Then we protected together." As the city breathed beneath them, and the soft sounds of the world returned, Mav fell asleep in the arms of the only woman who had ever made her feel whole. Not because she fixed her, not because she saved her, but because she saw her, chose her, and stayed. There were still things to face, conversations to have, decisions to make. But all of that could wait. For now there was this, the quiet after, the love that had grown in the center of the storm, and the feeling of being at last exactly where she was meant to be. Spring came slowly that year. The cold softened week by week, the air shifting from bitter to brisk to something almost warm. Trees began to bloom. Sidewalk cafes reopened. The city exhaled after months of holding its breath. And Mav, for the first time in years, wasn't bracing for something to go wrong. She was simply living. Her mornings had a rhythm now. Coffee with too much oat milk, a quiet inbox, walks to her favorite bookstore. And more often than not, she ended her day at Sloane's. Sometimes cooking, sometimes dancing barefoot in the kitchen, sometimes just lying tangled together in bed with no need for words. But the best part wasn't the comfort. It was the clarity, the knowing. She didn't have to guess where she stood anymore. She didn't have to apologize for being loved out loud. Sloane had made it clear at home, in public, in everything she said and did. That Maeve wasn't a moment. She was the plan. It showed in the little things. The toothbrush waiting beside Sloane's sink. The spare key slipped into Maeve Ellison's hand one quiet morning. The way Sloane would glance at her during meetings. Her gaze softening even when surrounded by board members in thousand suits. But something else had started to stir. Too. Not a threat, but a shift. Maeve had been offered an opportunity. A creative director role at a boutique design firm in London. The email had come through a week ago. She hadn't told Sloane yet, not because she wanted to hide it, but because she needed to understand her own heart first. What did she want? Not for her career, for her life, for them. And the answer, when it finally arrived, wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simple. She wanted to build something with Sloane. Not around her, not in her shadow, with her, side by side. I got an offer, Maeve said one evening as they sat on the balcony with cold tones of wine and a blanket over their legs. Sloane looked up. What kind of offer? A design job in London. Creative director, small firm, big potential. A pause. That's amazing. Maeve nodded. It is, and it made me realize something. What's that? Maeve turned to her, eyes steady. That I could say yes to that job and start over again. Or I could say yes to us and start something real. Something that doesn't require leaving the life I actually want. Sloane set her Colton down. Are you saying I want to stay? But I don't want to just stay. I want to grow here with you. Not as someone you support. Not as someone the world sees as your plus one. But as your partner. Sloane reached for her hand. Voice low. You already are. Then let's make it official. Sloane blinked. Maeve, I don't mean rings or ceremonies or headlines. Maeve said. I mean life. Apartment keys, grocery lists, holidays, everything. Sloane leaned in, forehead against hers. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear you say that. You waited exactly 15 chapters. Maeve teased, smiling. Sloane laughed, then kissed her long, soft, certain. Weeks passed. They moved into a new place together. A quiet loft with light that poured in through tall windows and a kitchen big enough for two people to burn pancakes in together. Maeve started freelancing again, taking on passion projects, using her platform to mentor young designers. Sloane continued running her empire. But now her calendar had carved out blocks labeled Maeve time and non-negotiable slow mornings. They went to brunches, to museums, to weekends upstate. They still fought sometimes over dishes, over work, over where to order takeout. But it was never cruel, never uncertain. The love between them had edges now, but also roots. And one Saturday afternoon, sitting on a picnic blanket in Central Park, Sloane reached into her bag, pulled out a small velvet box, and handed it to Maeve without a word. Maeve opened it. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant. No diamonds, just gold curved like a soft promise. This isn't a proposal, Sloane said. Not yet. This is a placeholder for when we both feel ready. But I wanted you to have something that says what I can't stop feeling. Maeve slipped it onto her finger. Then let me give you something, too. She leaned forward and kissed her. Not like a goodbye, not like a question, but like a vow. A few feet away, a tourist with a camera asked if they wanted a picture. Maeve looked at Sloane. Do you mind? Not anymore, Sloane said. And they posed, smiling, fingers intertwined. Sun on their faces. To women who met by accident, who stayed by choice, who loved by design, and who, in a world full of noise, had built something no headline could touch. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.